Hello everyone, welcome back to A Solitary Human Voice, except from Voices from Chernobyl, the oral history of a nuclear disaster. We have started the chapter yesterday and we have seen the narrative of Lyudmila, who was the wife of Vasily, a fireman who was a victim of Chernobyl disaster. So now we are continuing from where we stopped in the last class. Today we are starting with page number 78, and to summarize what we were discussing in the last class, we are continuing from where we stopped. Lyudmila followed her husband to Moscow, where he was admitted in a radiology hospital. Doctor told her that Vasily's central nervous system and skull got completely damaged. She was allowed to see him. That was where we stopped. And continuing, they met. Vasily wanted to hug her, but doctor did not allow. There were many victims there. People from Pripyat. Pripyat is a city in Ukraine which was affected by the Chernobyl disaster. There were 28 people in the plane. The other people moved away and gave space for them to be alone. She hugged and kissed him, but he warned him not to sit by his side. However, she ignored it. Next day, doctors didn't allow them to move from one room to other. Didn't allow them to. Them means allow the patients from one room to other. From the day on that day Lyudmila came to the hospital, they were allowed to sit together, move from room to room. But from then onwards, doctors didn't allow them to move from one room to another, because the conditions of the victim were becoming worse. The effect of radiation on different people were different. For some people, its intensity was low. For some, it was worse. Even the walls of the room emitted radiation. So they were moved again from that floor to another. Slowly, some changes began to appear on Vasily. Burns started appearing on his body, his mouth, on tongue. There was damage on the skin and it began to grow. The color of the body, the color of his body became blue, then red, and then gray brown. Next page, page number 78. It was really horrible for Lyudmila to describe it. It was difficult to see him in that condition. One comfort was that it happened so fast. There was no time to think or cry. 14 days passed. Lyudmila observes that a person dies in 14 days. Probably she means that his death and her death as well. Emotionally, she was dead too. Lyudmila remembers that he wanted to take her around Moscow. It was a wish of Vasily to take Lyudmila around Moscow. He used to say that Moscow was very beautiful during Victory Day, with all those celebrations and fireworks. While on hospital on the 8th floor, he asked her to open the window to see the fireworks. He had once promised that he would give flowers to her on holidays. He took 3 flowers from under the pillow. He had given money to the nurse, and the nurse had bought them. It was really an emotional moment in their life. She ran to him and kissed him, but she he stopped her, saying, "The doctors are forbidden that. No hugging me, no kissing." Now coming to page number 80. His condition became worse and worse. She was not able to leave him for a second. He always called her whenever she was needed. He called her Lucia and Luzanga. "Where are you?" he called. In other hospitals, in other hospital areas, it was soldiers who took care of the victims. But because the hospital workers were not ready to take care of them, they demanded protective clothing. So as a result, soldiers took care of them. Soldiers did every jobs, but every day the victims went on dying. 25 to 30 times a day he had to empty his bowels. Empty the bowel means go to toilet. His tools means bodily waste, were full of blood and mucus. Mucus is a white bodily secretion. His arms in his skin in arms and legs began to crack. His hair began to fall. So she herself cut all his hairs. If the hospital authority allowed, she would have. If the hospital authority had allowed, she would have stood with him 24 hours. She painfully remembers a conversation she had heard at that time. It was like this: "You have to understand, this is not your husband anymore, not a beloved person, but a radioactive object with a strong density of poisoning." So it was an advice given by somebody to Lyudmila that this is not her husband anymore, not a beloved person, but only a radioactive object with strong density of poisoning. So it was really horrible for her to listen to such an advice. She says that whatever condition he is, uh, Ludmila says that she loved him in every condition. She loved him, but the people meant that, the doctors or probably her friends meant that it was suicidal to be near him. However, she stood with him in his last moments. So we are stopping here and continue in the next class.